Good morning, my friends and members of the Value Syndicate, and thanks for being part of the Real Value Podcast bonus content. I've thought about this topic for quite a while now, and I hadn't decided really on the best way to present it, since it's definitely an off-topic topic, if you will. It's never really talked about within the appraising community, or really any part of the real estate or lending industries. In fact, all of the industries that I have been a part of in my working life, can't remember really many, if any, that have taught or discussed the concepts of health and well-being meditation specifically. Although if you were to go to a weekend conference, most likely in the real estate industry, depending on the type of conference, you might come across topics on health and well-being, exercise, meditation, eating properly, and things like that. But it's very rare. Certainly has never been talked about in our industry that I know of. So what is meditation and why to do it? Well, in all my years of teaching meditation in a variety of different forms and fashions, to answer that question, I have found that it's best to talk about what it is not first, and then we can talk about what it is and how to do it. So first off, meditation is not tied to or specific to any specific religion, like Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism, or any other Eastern or Western religion for that matter. You will most definitely find many religions employing some form of meditative practice into their rituals. And of course, they encourage their adherents and their followers to practice some form of meditation. But it wasn't created by nor specific to any particular religion or religious group. So if anybody has a hang up about meditating because of your own religion, or because your religion has told you that you shouldn't be doing that, I can likely point out how you are probably already meditating in some form or fashion in your Sabbath ceremonies or your Sunday morning church services. So it is not specific to religion. Many religions have adopted it. And by the way, meditation has been around. I think the earliest recorded forms are 7,000 plus years old in India and China. So meditation has been around in some form or fashion for a long, long time. And of course, many religions have adopted meditation. They typically call it prayer, but we'll talk about that in a minute. What is it not? It is not a portal to evil. I say this because in my 20 plus years of teaching martial arts and Zen meditation, I have had a few people exclaim that meditation, as they were taught, their belief system, is some way to open up some hidden dimensions of evil. And of course, while I try to be respectful of everybody's belief, at least on the surface, this is a tough one not to call out. Nevertheless, if that is what you believe, there is nothing I'll be able to say to convince you otherwise. Nor do I care to waste my time or yours trying. It's not worth it. You might as well turn off the recording, go about your way. There's nothing I can do for you. You just will have to never meditate for fear of opening up some portal to some evil dimension. In fact, I would say it's probably exactly the opposite. I have found if any portals, if they could be called that, were opened up, they were portals simply within me to find greater peace, calm, less stress, more relaxation, and better performance. If that's evil, I'll take it. What is it not? It is not easy. While simply sitting quietly and breathing, it's usually how meditation is described, if that sounds extremely easy, well, then why does almost nobody do it? Well, nobody does it because it's not easy. It's quite simple. It's a loop. It's not easy, and nobody does it. Nobody does it because it's not easy. It's not easy for most people to sit in silence, for one. And for two, most people have a real aversion to hearing the voices in their head when there is silence. So they opt for TV, for radio, for constant noise, for flicking through social media, and anything else they can do to fill their waking time with, to dampen the sounds and the thoughts in their head. I do this as well. That's the best way to say it. I'm not beyond doing this as well. There are times where if I have had a crazy day or just come home from playing, men's league hockey or something, and I'm all pumped up and I can't get to sleep right away, of course I'll turn on the TV or I'll listen to a podcast or I'll do something like this. And this will actually help lull me to sleep because my mind is focusing on that instead of all the things that I may have to do the next day or whatever I may be thinking about. So I'm not beyond it, but I will typically default to trying to breathe first, counting my breaths, which will lull me to sleep without the blue light going on in the background and without all the mental stimulation, which we're bombarded with daily. So meditation is not easy, but extremely valuable. So to recap, it's not specifically religious. It is not, in my experience, a portal to any kind of evil dimension. And it's simply not easy. So what is meditation? Well, quite simply, meditation is any form of mindfulness practice. Now, I use that word loosely because, of course, over the years, mindfulness has comes with it a baggage, meaning it's been used. It's used in the New Age sense. What is mindfulness? And many people kind of write it off and go, "Oh, I'm not into that hairy fairy stuff, so I don't need it." But simply walking through your backyard, walking through an apple orchard is a form of meditation. Sitting in your easy chair in silence is meditation. Bowing your head in prayer is a form of meditation. And basically anything you might do that has you become quiet without external input and focusing on your mind, body, and possibly your breath is meditation. Remember when I said that I could likely point to some religious practice that you're taking part in that we would call meditation? Well, again, bowing your head in prayer. You might be listening to a pastor, preacher, or a deacon exclaim the prayer, but you are focusing on that one thing. You are quieting your mind, hopefully. You're bowing your head. You're sitting in silence. This is meditation. If you sit in silent prayer yourself, however you might do that and whatever you might call that, this is, in fact, meditation. Now, let me clear up another misconception for some of the macho guys who might be listening. I've encountered many over the years who proclaim meditation to connote some type of or some form of, we'll call it sissification, if that's a word, of males in our society. It's a practice for sissies and for the weak, like yoga or drinking lattes and drinks with, say, paper umbrellas in them. The irony in that thinking, of course, is that getting one of these hyper macho super males to sit for a period of 10 to 15 minutes in silence is often more excruciating for them, both physically and mentally, by the way, maybe emotionally, than doing one of the many killer CrossFit WODs or pushing them to their limits in some other area, like on the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu mats or Aikido mats or something like this. I've met many of these people over the years who poo-poo meditation and sitting in silence as something for the weak and the sissies. And then when I make them do it, they find it's far more difficult. Yoga, by the way, is extremely difficult. I've done it, and I would prefer to be getting my ass kicked and choked out on the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu mat than having to do yoga. It's extremely, extremely difficult. So meditation can be one of the most difficult things any of you will ever do because the mind is the biggest obstacle that all of us will ever encounter. The saying, it's quite frequent, you are your own worst enemy. The saying that we are all our own worst enemy is, of course, referring to the behaviors and the habits of the mind that make us choose the variety of things that we choose on a daily basis, on a moment-to-moment basis. It's our programming. And quite often, this programming keeps us from moving forward, from solving problems, from staying rooted in our own self-pity and our bad habits, from staying with people we shouldn't be with, and so on and so forth. And I've talked several times in previous episodes about our belief systems, where they originate, and how they oftentimes keep us rooted in lack thinking and from breaking free of these limiting beliefs. Most people will never confront their limiting belief systems, specifically because it is so difficult and scary to do so. When you are faced with, when you come face to face with a limiting behavior, a limiting belief, or a bad habit, you must also confront the idea that you'll have to change, and change is the biggest obstacle for most people. It is far easier to keep drinking, to keep smoking, to keep bitching and complaining, to self-sabotage, to keep spending instead of saving, for example, or whatever particular belief system may hold you back. It's much easier to stay in that system than to confront it, recognize it, and then force yourself to replace it with some other pillar, some new practice. And for that reason, meditation has been linked to some of the most intellectual, some of the smartest, some of the greatest performers, and some of the most prolific inventors of our time, as well as some of the bravest men and women in world history. The most common and recognized link of meditation is, of course, between the Japanese samurai warrior class and specifically Zen meditation. As part of their training as warriors and part of their daily practice. Some of the most fierce warriors of almost every culture, by the way, not just Japanese samurai culture, but of the most fierce warriors in any culture have integrated some form of silence practice, some form of meditation, of mind-body training to help them shape and forge the strongest connection possible between their mind and body so that they will be able to perform better under extreme stress, under extreme danger, and in life and death situations. And of course, for the samurai, they're some of the most famous and prolific at expressing these concepts, these ideas, Chinese and Japanese, by the way, of facing one's own death, one's own mortality. Meditation was one of the best ways to help them confront their mortality, their own death, their own non-existence, if you will, while sitting in silence so that fear wouldn't slow them down in battle. If they were facing a fierce enemy, they didn't all of a sudden stop. This is the fight, flight, or freeze idea, and we'll talk about this in a minute. They wouldn't stop and freeze and all of a sudden confront this idea that, oh crap, I may be dead in a minute. No, they confronted that while sitting in meditation so that when they got in battle, they wouldn't be slowed down by this. They had confronted their own mortality and had come to terms with it, accepted it, and now they could move on. Now, since then, of course, a variety of meditative practices have made their way to the West, which is here, from the East, ranging from what we'll say very easy, peaceful methods, laying on a bed and imagining yourself walking through a peaceful valley of daisies. This is kind of the soft method, but it has its benefits. We'll call those the peaceful methods, to some very hardcore methodologies suited for specific goals and, of course, specific personalities and professions. My personal experience was with the latter, a very militaristic form called Rinzai Zen, whereby you sat in the lotus or half lotus position, with your legs and cross-legged position, sitting on pillows to kind of prop up your butt, straighten out your spine, head aiming toward the ceiling, pushing straight up and down. And you sat there for 35, 40, sometimes 50 to 60 minutes in excruciating pain, by the way. After a while, your hips and your back and your neck and shoulders, everything is in excruciating pain. But you had to learn how to confront that pain. You had to deal with it head on, and you did it in silence. There could be 10, 20, 50, 60 people in the room all sitting doing meditation, but you couldn't move. If you moved, you got yelled at. There were a few periods called kinhin where you could stand up and you would move around, again silently, in a very kind of ritualistic, moving meditation manner. But then you would sit back down on your pillow and you might sit for another 20, 30 minutes at a time. This is very militaristic, and I'm not necessarily saying this is the best way. It was a great experience for me because, of course, it allowed me to confront a lot of the fears I had. And by the way, and I've talked about this in other episodes, and maybe the last one, I think, the last episode, where when you choose something, you choose a difficult scenario in life and you choose to put yourself through that, everything else becomes relative. Having sat through daily 30 to 45-minute excruciatingly painful seated meditation periods and then carrying on with my daily existence, everything else became relative, meaning anytime I faced any stress or fear or difficult situation in my life, it always was stacked up against or compared to those seated meditation sessions. And when you can sit for 45 minutes in excruciating pain, your body literally shaking, you're not allowed to scratch any itches, you're not allowed to really move. You just sit straight forward, and you have to find a place within you and in your breathing whereby you can move beyond the pain, you can accept the pain, absorb the pain, and become one with the pain. Everything in life becomes easy. Everything else, every challenge in life becomes relative to that experience. And I'm not suggesting that anybody undertake this or that type of meditation is right for most people, but understand that the connection between meditation, of confronting your fears, even if it's sitting for 10 minutes in silence and having to hear the voices in your head, can be extremely beneficial and will make everything else you experience during the day relative to that experience, sitting and meditating. I can tell you that law enforcement and military groups from all over the world have begun to recognize the benefits of meditation because I've helped train some of them. Not only for the overwhelming health benefits for the men and women who are under constant stress. I mean, police officers, of course, are under constant stress whether they're on duty or not. Military professionals are under constant stress daily, whether they're in theater, not in theater, even at their normal daily jobs. They're under stress in their jobs and their environments. But they also have adopted meditation practices for the mental and physical benefits of training the mind and body to perform better under stress and then deal with the stress much better after a situation. Meaning, they've done extensive biofeedback studies, which are studies where they hook students up with all kinds of monitors and whatnot, so they can see their breathing, their how their skin, galvanic skin response rates, and sweating, and all these other, and their brain waves and things like this. And they have done these studies in the military of elite forces who have incorporated meditation practice into their training, and they found a very distinct link between enhanced mental and physical performance after the meditation training as opposed to before. And these connections were made in things, practices, and exercises like shooting exercises. The meditators shot better. They had better groupings in the target. They were able to move better, so on and so forth. They found connections in close quarters battle exercises where guys were more quickly and their ability to acquire a target more quickly and put a round downrange and on the target was much better through the meditators than the non-meditators. Of course, sniper training, where these guys have to literally crawl for hours, sometimes days, to their sit position and then sit in silence and just focus on their breath, maybe for days before a target of opportunity would come up. And of course, after action responses after battle, after men and women have been in some very hairy scenario, they tested and the meditators simply performed better. They came down better and dealt with the after action stress much better than the non-meditating units. And the units that meditated had much higher performance levels before, during, and after an engagement, and also in the long-term body and mind responses, again, in dealing with the stress of the job and dealing with potentially taking the lives and having their own lives placed in danger daily. Taking another human life, which, by the way, I'm going to talk about. I have talked about it in the Appraising with a Gun podcast, if you haven't heard that one already. So, by the way, if you're interested in reading more about those studies, just Google meditation for elite soldiers or warrior mind training for the military, something like that, and you will find story after story of this type of training as well as the studies that have occurred. Okay, so meditation isn't just for the weak. It's not just for hippies, for peaceniks, for tree huggers, and granola eaters. So what is it? Well, meditation, as I'm referring to it, is simply taking some period of time out of your day to sit in silence and focus on one thing. Now, that one thing could simply be your breathing. This is one of the most common forms of meditation, by the way, and in my opinion, one of the most valuable, and I'm going to tell you why shortly, why the breath is so important. Focusing on your breath only, let me say, can be very difficult for many at first. So some may opt to focus on a thing like, well, you can pick whatever it is. You could pick a Rubik's Cube. You could have a candle sitting in front of you. Some people will light a piece of incense and have that sitting, and they'll just focus on the smoke rising off of the stick of incense. You could focus on a sound. You could choose a mantra, like a word. The most famous is Om, Om, O-M. Or you could pop in some earbuds and you can listen to guided meditation sessions. I have no problem with any of those methods as long as you're doing it. The doing it is the most important part. And of course, it needs to be stated that sitting with your eyes closed and listening to, say, Def Leppard or AC/DC, that's not meditation. The point of meditation is really to be in silence, to let the voices bubble up, to let the thoughts bubble up, to let the stress bubble up, and then allow it to kind of float away without getting attached to it. Attachment is a big concept in meditation, or I should say non-attachment, because much of the problems we deal with on a daily basis is being stimulated by something. It could be a piece of news. It could be some situation we're dealing with. It could be a particular appraisal thing that we're dealing with. And then we get attached to it, and all of our emotions get attached to it, and we cling to it. And so we quite often refer to these as swinging monkeys from the vines. You go from thought to thought to thought, or jumping in a canoe going down a river. And then pretty soon you find yourself many, many trees away, many, many vines away, or many, many miles away down the river as you jumped into these thought canoes and never realizing how you actually got to your destination. So one of the points I should say of meditation is to let that stuff bubble up. Let the stress, the thoughts, the ideas, crap, did I leave the iron on? What do I have to do tomorrow? Oh, I got 6 assignments tomorrow. You allow that stuff to bubble up. The point is to not have that stuff come into your head. The point is to not get attached to it. So what we always suggest doing is when those thoughts come into your head, you simply recognize that you've had the thought. You put a little parentheses or a cloud bubble around it, and then you let it float away. You imagine this bubble, and you just let the thought float away. Basically, you're saying to yourself, there's nothing I can do about it now, so I'm not going to deal with it now. And you just let it float away. And then you go back to your counting, and I'll talk about this process in a minute. So if you've got music playing in the background, or they're in your ears and your earbuds, your mind is going to focus on the words of the songs, the music, and everything else. And you will not have silence to allow those things to bubble up and then let them float away. Now, there are some great beginner meditation apps, by the way. A popular one is called Headspace, the Headspace app for both iPhone and for Android. It's really nice for those just getting into meditation, by the way. And that's not the only one. There are several. Try any one. It doesn't matter. Headspace has just become very popular. Meditation.com, I think, has another app. And since I came up through, as I mentioned, a very hardcore kind of militaristic style of Zen, and I lived right in a monastery, I've got lots of different techniques that I can use during my meditation sessions. But I'm not beyond using an app like that from time to time either. Sometimes I like to listen to how other people will express certain meditative practices. But the Headspace app in particular, and many like it, can start you out right on beginner phase 1. Where it will tell you what you need to be doing, what you need to be thinking or not thinking about, how you need to be sitting, how you need to be breathing, and then you'll have periods of silence, maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and you will work through these phases or through these modules until you get to longer and longer sessions, and it's basically teaching you how to meditate. So I'm a big fan of those if you can't just plop yourself down on a cushion and start sitting right off the bat. I particularly, because of my training and what I've come through, I still opt to simply sit cross-legged on a cushion with my hands on my lap, my back straight, and I use a simple counting method most days of 1 breath in and 1 breath out as 1 count. So I breathe in, I hold, I breathe out, and I count that 1 breath. I do it again, breathe in, hold, breathe out, and I count that 2. And I'm doing this all with no movement. My mouth isn't. Oh, I'm doing it all through my nose, by the way. I try to get to 10. So I'm counting in a breath, out a breath is count 1, in a breath, out a breath is count 2. I'm trying to sink the breath lower and lower into my abdomen and diaphragm, and I'm trying to get to 10. And I'm trying to get to 10 without getting attached to a thought. Not get to 10 without thinking. This is almost impossible. The idea is not to clear your head. The idea is to deal with the thoughts that come into your head. And with greater and greater practice in this meditative exercise, you will become much better at not having the thoughts pop into your head and then, of course, not getting attached to it. You'll be much more adept at only having the things pop into your head that lead to better performance, more creativity, and so on. So I try to get to 10 with my counting. But here's the thing. If a thought comes into my mind that distracts me, I jump into that canoe, so to speak. Again, the most common, oh, did I leave the iron on? Oh, man, crap, did I lock my doors to my car? And all of a sudden, I'm jumping in and out of these canoes going down the river. And then 2 minutes later, I realize, crap, I was at count 3 and I got distracted. I lost my count. I have to go back to 1. So it becomes a little bit like a game of trying to stay focused on my breath only and on the count. And I will actually see in my mind's eye, I'm doing this with my eyes open, by the way. I don't recommend closing your eyes for meditation because it's too easy to, the backs of your eyelids become like little theater screens for your mental projections. So only the most advanced meditators can close their eyes. I would recommend not closing your eyes. You soften your gaze. You don't focus on anything in particular. If you're looking at a candle in front of you, you kind of soften your gaze. You open up your peripheral vision so you can take in everything up to 180 degrees or more. Advanced meditators have recorded 270-degree peripheral view because they can soften their gaze and kind of open things up to their awareness, which, by the way, is an added benefit. Your awareness expands. You can think of it like a radar or sonar expanding out in front of you. Your awareness, your sensitivity, your feelings, your emotions, again, the galvanic skin response. You become a much more aware being as you're moving through the world. But as I'm doing this, my eyes are open. I've softened my gaze. I'm looking down about 4 feet in front of me at an angle, and I'm just counting. I'm counting my breaths. And if I get attached to a thought and I get distracted and I lose the count, I simply go back to one. So if I only make it to 3 or 4, I just go back to one and I start over. And it becomes a game of staying focused on the breath and the count. And I will tell you that there are days that I literally don't make it past the count of 1. I'm distracted, I'm disjointed, I'm disoriented, and I simply can't keep the thoughts away, which again is not a problem. We all deal with that. But I get hooked on the stream of thoughts for a minute or two. I jump in and out of those canoes, and then I have to remind myself to start counting again. So I just simply go back to 1, and that is the practice. That is the point. Even on my most distracted days, I'm still employing the discipline of sitting in silence for 20 to 30 minutes. I typically do it first thing in the morning, by the way. Strong meditators will meditate first thing in the morning and then just before bed. Those are the best times. But even if you can only get it in once a day, even if it's at lunchtime, the time doesn't matter. The discipline does. The doing of it is the thing. In fact, we had a saying in the Zen community that enlightenment is not something outside of you. Simply sitting in meditation is evidence of enlightenment. And I've carried that idea and thought through everything that I do, meaning just getting on the mat and doing jujitsu or aikido, getting into the gym, which is in my garage, by the way, is evidence of enlightenment. The discipline is the thing. It doesn't really matter what you're doing. It matters that you're doing it. So I just sit, I count my breaths, I see the count, I visualize it with my eyes open. 1, the number 1 I can see in my head, the number 1 I can see on the exhale. Some days are awesome, and I can get to 6 or 8 before having my thoughts distract me, and I have to go back to 1. And that's after 25 years of doing it, by the way. And some days I don't make it past 1, 2, or 3. It's just the point of sitting in meditation. The point is not to win or lose. It's simply to do it. And by the way, I know when I haven't meditated in a day or two because I can feel it in my thinking. I can feel it in my body. I can feel it in my thought process, in my stress, in my bones. I know when my decision-making is sluggish or difficult, and I know immediately because I forgot to meditate that morning. I know when my creativity has begun to wane, that it's because I forgot to meditate that morning, or maybe for the past few days. And then boom, I get back at it. I come back to the self that I've come to know and love, and I'm much more organized. I'm much more creative. I'm much more relaxed. I'm much more aware, ready, in tune, less stressed, more motivated, and all the other feelings and emotions associated with this, what I refer to as warrior practice. It's not hairy-fairy. It's not New Age. It's 7,000 years of practice by men, women, and children of all cultures. Now, what you can't see, of course, when you meditate is the positive effect that it is having on your blood pressure, on your internal organs from having the breath pressure applied to them each morning. Pressure is an important concept in healthy living. On my spine from sitting up straight in a half lotus seated position. It's maybe the only time during the day that my spine, the muscles along my spine are getting activated because, of course, we sit at a desk half the day, maybe longer, and most of us will develop some sort of posture issues as a result. Well, when you sit in meditation, at least these forms that I'm recommending, you are sitting and you are pushing your, and I'll talk about the posture in a minute, but you're basically sitting with your head, imagining your head holding up the ceiling. So if you take the crown of your head, which is where your hair starts to spiral out from the very top of your head, and you push that straight up, you're lengthening and drawing the spine out. So, of course, you can't see all of that stuff going on inside of your body. You can't see the pressure on and then the growth occurring in your diaphragm from pushing your breath lower and lower with each breath. And you can't see internally the adrenaline and cortisol response within your body during times of stress or on the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems and their response to stimulus or perceived stimulus, by the way. The mind creates a lot of our stress from our environments and from our thinking. You can't see all of those benefits going on, but those, of course, are occurring with meditation. And this is an important concept, by the way. I talked in one of the last episodes about the adrenaline and the cortisol response and how it's literally killing us. I think it was the Appraising with a Gun episode. It's literally killing us not because we have saber-toothed tigers around every corner waiting to eat us, but because of the constant and continuous 24-hour news cycle, the talk of terrorists waiting to blow you up, the constant political circus running on loops in the background at your office, the constant talk about the end of the appraisal business as we know it, companies stealing our information and our data, the constant negativity that pervades our industry specifically, the negative self-talk and the ever-present enemies of our businesses waiting to put you into bankruptcy, the horrible attitudes and shit talkers on every forum and group you belong to, and just the constant stress that many of you put yourselves through because you don't know any different. I don't blame you for that, but many of you don't know a different way. It's the way you were raised, it's the way you were taught, and it's simply the way you know how to do it. So you continue on being this particular kind of person. And the obvious problem being that all of these things in our environment, coupled with our belief systems and how many of you think, these things, this way of thinking, these behavior patterns are literally killing you. The amount of adrenaline, the amount of cortisol, which is the stress hormone, builds belly fat and kills your heart, and this whole cocktail of stress hormones pumping through your system on a daily basis, a cocktail that was biologically meant to help you get away from the occasional saber-toothed tiger, is not constantly pumping through your system as if the tiger is there because we know they're extinct, but it's pumping through your system because you're imagining that it's there every single minute of every single day. Our bodies and minds were not meant to deal with this useful but potentially deadly chemical cocktail on such an extreme and pervasive basis. We were meant to have the occasional adrenaline dump, as it's called, during times of high stress, and then it dwindles. It gets absorbed into your bloodstream, you sweat it out, you piss it out, whatever happens, you have a come down, and it's over. And you may not have another adrenaline dump for weeks or months or even years. Of course, in those stressful professions like police officers and military and maybe the people who are professional fishermen in the Bering Sea for a living, they're dealing with adrenaline dumps all day long during those seasons. But the average person is having these little trickles of adrenaline and cortisol into their bloodstream every time they see a stressful newscast, for example, or they hop onto Facebook and they jump into a forum and they see somebody else proclaiming doom and gloom. So your body was used to having a major adrenaline dump, but then having it dissipate, you have a come down and it's over. And you may not have another one for weeks, months, or years, but unfortunately, because of the world we live in, we're dealing with it on a daily basis and we don't even know it. And what's even worse in our industry is that it's fueled by your peers around every corner. I've said it before. I don't know if the appraisal industry attracts a certain type of negative individual, a certain type of sarcastic old curmudgeon, or if it creates them. But there is definitely an inordinate amount of them in our industry. And the sad thing is that many of the new appraisers coming into the business are exposed to this attitude and just unfortunately accept it as a way of being. They just think it's right because they see their people they look up to, people who've been in it for 20, 25 years. And they think, oh, well, these are the leaders in our industry. This is the way they are. I guess I'll adopt their attitudes and behaviors and belief systems. They hear all the talk about all the enemies in our business, the realtors, the lenders, the AMCs, the software company, all those stupid homeowners. And these are the saber-toothed tigers creating undue stress for us in our daily lives. All self-created, by the way. It's not to say that there aren't things we need to keep our eyes out for, but I've said it many, many times. There's almost nothing you're going to do about the AMCs. They're going to, whatever happens with AMCs is going to happen regardless of how much bitching you do on some forum. No, there's not going to be any class action lawsuits against software companies. You know why? Because appraisers can't pull together. Maybe 300 or 400 of you will show up to a conference, but there's 50, 60,000 appraisers in the country. You're only hearing from the same 6 or 7 or 10 people on any given forum. Nobody's going to pull together to do a class action lawsuit against a software company. So it's better just to accept it, Learn how to work within it, choose a new software company, don't kill yourself over it, and move on with your day. And by all means, don't let somebody else in your peer group affect your attitude, your state of mind, or your belief system, at least not in a negative way. So meditation is one practice to help us deal with all of these daily stressors and help give us perspective on all of it. Help us put all of the 70 to 100,000 bits of information that we take in on a daily basis into its proper mental file cabinet or trash can. Help us sort out the adrenaline and the cortisol that's been dripping into your bloodstream every hour, especially after you check your Facebook feed, by the way. This is when they notice these adrenaline and cortisol hits, the stress hits. You either get a epinephrine dump, meaning you get excited when somebody clicks like or shows you a little heart or whatever on your post, which becomes like crack or heroin, or you get stressed out because you realize your life is not living up to all the fake lives that you see on social media. So this is adrenaline and cortisol and other chemicals are dripping into your bloodstream every hour, and they help strengthen the connection between the mind and body, which is a connected system, by the way, that relies on each other to function. The mind relies on the body, and the body relies on the mind. There's a saying in the Zen community that goes something like this, I'm paraphrasing, that the mind is formless body, and that the body is the mind expressed physically, meaning mind moves the body and the body moves the mind. Your thinking affects your body, and how you treat your body affects your thinking. Clean up one of them, and the other starts to move. Clean up your thinking, and your body will respond positively. Start exercising and eating better, and you will notice the effects in your mind. Okay, so let's talk briefly about practice, since I don't want this to be an exhaustive study on meditation, and it just can't be. It could be hours long. I used to teach a 6-week introductory course, which was 2 hours a week for 6 weeks, 12 hours, and even then it was extremely beginner. We couldn't get it all in. So I can't possibly hope to teach you everything about meditation in a 30 or 40 or 50-minute podcast. The easiest way to get started is to simply sit in a chair in a room with no distractions for 5 minutes. That's all I'm challenging you to do, 5 minutes. Sit in the chair. But what I'm going to recommend is that you become what we call autonomous, meaning don't lean up against the back of the chair. Don't rely on the chair to keep your back straight. You're only sitting in it because that's what Westerners are used to doing instead of sitting on the floor. I'm not going to encourage you to sit on a floor or a pillow just yet. You could get to that point in the advanced study. But for now, just sit in a chair like you're used to. But sit forward, straighten up your back, drive your shoulders back a little bit. Basically what we say is ears and shoulders should be in line, and then nose and navel should be in line. Sit upright as if the crown of your head, again where your hair begins and starts to spiral out from the top of your head, was holding up the ceiling and keeping it from crushing you. Imagine there's a board on top of your head, again at the crown, which is usually at the top and the back of your head. From there, you simply start counting your breaths. And I'm going to teach you a method called the box method. You start to inhale, and you count to 4 while you're inhaling. So as you start to breathe in, you go 1, 2, 3, 4. You've just inhaled. And then you hold that breath in your belly for 4 seconds. So you hold it. You're not breathing now. And you just count 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you slowly start to exhale, counting to 4 as you do. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the breath is out of your body. And at the end of the breath, where there's no breath in your body anymore, you count to 4. So you're waiting for a 4 count before you inhale again. And that is the box. It's called the box method because you're literally building a 4-sided box of breath or breathing by counting to 4 with each inhale and exhale, and then each holding period. Before you inhale and after you exhale. So you inhale for 4, hold for 4. Exhale for 4, hold for 4. And just keep doing this. And then repeat it for 5 minutes. You're done. Don't take your blood pressure. Don't expect your life to change. Don't expect to move mountains or pick up cars. Don't expect anything at all as a result. Just do it and shut up about it. Don't tell anybody. Just move on with your day. And then do it again the next day. And if you like what you felt or experienced, of course, you can do it before bed as well. And by the way, you'll find likely you sleep better as a result. Do it each day for the first week for 5 minutes only. That's it. 5 minutes. Everybody has 5 minutes. The second week, of course, set your watch, your stopwatch. You can do it. There's apps, by the way. Headspace has one of them too. I have a Zen meditation app on my phone that I can set for whatever time, and it gives me some little gongs, just like when I was living in the monastery. It makes me feel at home, but I can set the timer for whatever time I want. So set your timer the second week for 8 minutes. So you go from 5 to 8, you're adding 3 minutes. We're not doubling it. Just add 3 minutes and do the same box technique. And then the following week, make it 12 minutes. Again, we're not doubling it. We're not going from 5 to 10, 10 to 20. We're going from 5 to 8, 8 to 12. And then keep doing this over the course of the weeks until you can get up to 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 30 minutes. And remember, silence. Unless, of course, you're using the Headspace app with your earbuds where the trainer will guide you through the meditation. But silence, uninterrupted, meaning put your phone on silent. Don't even put it on vibrate. Put your phone on silence so that when the texts, the emails, the phone calls or whatever come in, you're not looking down at your phone. You're not distracted. You're not going to use the excuse, oh, I got to take this. No, it's 5 minutes, man. You can do it. Silent, uninterrupted, and regular. 5 minutes a day, 8 minutes a day, 12 minutes a day, eventually 20 to 30 minutes a day. Now, what you'll find is if you say right now, well, geez, my day is filled, it's structured, I have kids, I have to get up. What you're going to find is that once you start meditating, you'll simply get up 10, 15, 20, or 30 minutes earlier to fit in your meditation before the kids wake up, before the wife or husband wake up, before the significant other gets up. You'll just start opening up your day and opening up your clock to fit in the meditation, which is part of the process. Now, I told you I'd talk about why breath is so important, so here it is. The most obvious reason is that we simply can't do without it. It's one of the things that keeps us alive, is it not? It's the very first thing you do, literally, when you come into this world. When you came out of the womb, they spanked you on the butt, you started crying, you took in a breath. And of course, it will be the last thing you do when you leave this world. You'll take one last breath, you'll exhale one last time, it's over. It's also the one thing that we do completely unconsciously, meaning you don't have to think about breathing, you just do it. But you can also control consciously. I'll say that again. It's the one thing we can do completely unconsciously, but it's also a process we can control consciously. If any of you have been through military training, law enforcement training, shooting training, anything like that, stress inoculation training, one of the most important things that you learn is how to control your breath in times of high stress. Because if you can control your breath, your breathing in times of high stress, you can control almost every other function. You can control how adrenaline affects your ability to take aim, to shoot, to whatever. If you're a hunter, everybody who's a hunter has heard of buck fever. When you draw back the bow, but you just can't shoot, or you don't even have the strength to draw back the bow because adrenaline has sapped you of your strength. Learning to control your breath, to calm it, controls all the other functions, or helps control and reduce all the other stress functions in your body. So it's something we can do consciously, but something that, of course, occurs unconsciously. We can speed it up, we can slow it down, and we can hold it by consciously trying to hold it. And given this conscious and subconscious or unconscious nature of our breath, it is the vital connection between the conscious and subconscious mind and between the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems in our body. And without going into exhaustive detail, of course, Google is there for you, but I would recommend a deep study on sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. The sympathetic nervous system prepares the body for intense physical activity, and it triggers the fight, flight, or freeze system in times of high stress. It determines, based on that adrenaline and cortisol dump, whether you're going to fight back like a bear, whether you're going to flee and run away, or whether you're going to freeze in times of high stress. And the parasympathetic, conversely, that system does the exact opposite in that it calms, it relaxes, it soothes the body. It helps with the adrenaline dump. It helps pull the adrenaline out of the bloodstream and dissipate it so that you can have the come down. So if the sympathetic system is the fight or flight system, the parasympathetic is the rest and digest system. And by taking control of your breathing, you are consciously and actively practicing taking control of these two systems to help balance them out, while also training your mind to kind of react less and respond more efficiently, respond better. And by the way, our sympathetic and parasympathetic systems have gotten extremely out of whack over our lifetimes because of all those external stimulus and stimuli that I have talked about in this bonus episode. You're literally resetting and retraining your brain how to deal with internal and external stimuli to be a more healthy, happy, motivated, integrated, and well-adjusted human organism. You're bringing those two systems back into balance because they've gotten out of balance, whether you know it or not. You will quite simply perform better, feel better, sleep better, oxygenate your blood better, calm your mind better, react better and faster, more efficiently and more appropriately, and just generally be better suited for the stresses of daily life than those who don't meditate. Now, if I have to explain to you why this might be beneficial for you and your family, then meditation is most definitely something you need. Of course, if you've fully grasped the benefits, which will be most of you, of doing this type of practice, and some of you may already be meditators, and I'm preaching to the choir, but if you've grasped all this concept and the idea of doing this type of practice on the regular, then I will go a step further and challenge you. I will challenge you for 30 days. Take the 30-day meditation challenge of box breathing that I talked about in this episode and see if you can get to 20 to 30 minutes by the end of the 30 days. Again, starting with 5, then go to 8, then go to 12, go to 16 after that, and then up to 20, 25, whatever it might be. And I guarantee that if you do, you'll notice a marked difference in your daily existence, in your performance, in your stress response, how you look at your day, how you deal with your day, how you look at your future, how you deal with your future. Not to mention, you'll live longer and healthier as a result and probably be a more tolerable person to be around. All right, I'd like to thank you, my friends. That is it for this bonus episode on meditation. I hope you've gained some value from it, and I really hope you take me up on the 30-day challenge. I would love to hear some feedback from you if you do, and I look forward to talking with you all again on the next episode. If you have any questions, by the way, about any of this, I am here to help, so don't hesitate to call me. You can call me direct. You can shoot me an email. I will help in any way that I can, and I wish you all much success and prosperity. Talk to you again on the next one.